since Wittgenstein proposed a description and proposed a diagnosis. The description is everything, and we can accept this description without losing ontology, and that's the obvious way. And I would like just to indicate that Wittgenstein had Catholic friends, Elisabeth Enskamp and Peter Gitsch, and he died in their house. And Elisabeth Enskamp was, he was a very close friend and a student of Wittgenstein. And he was engaged Catholic, and he wrote booklets for her community, for her parish. And he wrote a small booklet on transubstantiation. And it's not philosophical. It's not a philosophical text. It's a pastoral text for regular members of the community. But the first sentence is famous and it is beautiful. And I can read it since I found it on the internet. The first sentence of the booklet wrote by Wittgenstein's Catholic friend. It is easiest to tell what transubstantiation is by saying this: little children should be taught about it as early as possible. What does it mean? That it is a way of life. This is a kind of practice, and she visibly accepted this view that Catholicism is practice, which we might be involved in it. It is not only theoretical. It grasps ethical life and practice and liturgy and everything, and also philosophical and theological concepts. And I think this first sentence is beautiful, and to all of us who are parents, I think it's a good advice. And I think she joined it. She joined ontology, metaphysics, plus this rich and very deep description of ways of life. So thank you. That's just one such remark.
Thank you. Should I ask? Okay, with a microphone, perhaps. Thank you so much. I can only. That's a very good example of maybe a way of solving the problem, because I'm just still thinking about this. I'm not sure of how really to on the one hand connect the ontological or metaphysical aspects of Christian liturgy and Christian language, you could say, with descriptive Wittgensteinian analysis of ways of life. But I think that's the way in. But also, I think recently I've seen the danger with the notion of a way of life, of philosophy, is also vanity. The people want to identify as philosophers, and that's very dangerous, because then the philosophy itself becomes less important than you feeling like you are a philosopher, and that's sophism, So and then the truth becomes secondary, but your way of manner of playing and acting, being a philosopher, becomes more important. And I think that's a danger for fetishizing the notion of philosophy being a way of life. People like Adorno and others. I think it can be, and I'm more hopeful. I think also philosophy can be creative, but I think it's still a question which is hard to answer. But thank you so much. An encouraging example.
Thank you to, hello, yeah. Thank you to both speakers. I like both of your papers. And this question is to Eirik, related to your answer, and in my reconstruction of what you said in my question, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but is what you're saying that Wittgenstein's pragmatism basically leads him to think that concepts are equivocal and non-discrete, and it seems like kind of in the dyad between philosophy and life, there's an analogy to theology and philosophy and this function of the handmaiden, but Wittgenstein has no theory of the handmaiden, so it leads to this collapse between pragmatic, kind of pragmatic conflation between philosophy and life, even though that seems like not where Wittgenstein wanted to go. Is this kind of, so I guess that maybe a more pointed question would be, or do you feel that the pragmatism of Wittgenstein is just badly constructed, or that it kind of in its premise leads to where you want to avoid?
Well, I'll try to answer. It's an important question. Well, so I often agree, I tend to agree sometimes with Wittgenstein that often philosophy and the philosophical language can be unhealthy and confusing. I've experienced that sometimes myself, so it's very easy to get lost in a kind of maze of concepts where language really does go on holiday, and it feels something is off. Something seems very ghostly, very airy, without any kind of foundation in something. And I think I've been accused personally sometimes of friends of going too easily from just talking about normal things and about practical matters to go on that meta level of concepts. And I think that sometimes going too quickly to that level might be a danger for doing philosophy badly. But I don't think that that's always the case. I think there is, and that's my suggestion of the notion of the holy day and the exceptional day. People like Charles Taylor's talking about the kairotic day, the day of those days that are exceptional, and the kairos of something that opens up, which doesn't happen every day. That might be constitutive sometimes, and even regenerative of language and thinking and concepts themselves. So I think that's what I wanted to push Wittgenstein and say. Philosophy shouldn't just be focusing on the common sense, the ordinary, everyday sphere of things. It has to, like with Plato, look at what's beyond that, what's the exceptional, something that's hard to grasp. If it's going to reach a level of difficulty, that I think it loses if it goes to that purely, you could say, everyday level. That's my thoughts on that. Trying to clarify it at least.
So thank you so much for your both papers. I very much sympathize with them. I have a question to Raul. It's probably a more general question. Klaus Hemmerle wrote a thesis towards a Trinitarian ontology. What do you think is the reason that he did not wrote the thesis towards a Trinitarian epistemology? I have some general doubt about the epistemology itself as something very much modern, which concerns, some kind of distant approach to the reality, which, first from this distance can be known or then, represented. And this proposal of Hemmerle goes somehow beyond this, beyond this modern epistemological view of the relation to reality. So to say, why to do the Trinitarian epistemology? That would be the question.
Well, thank you very much for the question, because it allows me to develop some ideas I couldn't develop in the presentation. I think the answer is quite clear, as you let understand with your question. And indeed, because the epistemological discourse is a modern discourse built in the last 2 centuries, actually, by the organization of knowledge within disciplines. And that's why I purposely, in the beginning, emphasized that I would use the term epistemology both in a broad and in a straight sense, okay? Both try to, because I want to dialogue too with what's today called transdisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity, because it's a discourse that within the disciplinary problem, the epistemology, the weak conceptuality of epistemology tries to overcome the problem. No? That's what's talking about yesterday, Lubomir, no? About the epistemology of complexity, Nicolescu, Morin, etc. Why, in the broad sense, epistemology means that the term of comparison or the term of validity of a knowledge, of truth, of sense, is reality itself, is being, is finitude, if you want to use Falk words. So that's a parameter, the point. So epistemology in this sense means a discourse that tries to grab, to say something about reality in terms of validative discourse, that you can verify if what I'm saying, at least through experience, has a sense or not. I mean, it's complex, but that's why, of course, Heimerle speaks about ontology, because it's the larger way of accessing the problem, and of course, it's all about the task of thinking. So, in this sense, epistemology is equal to thinking, in this broad sense. Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you, both of you, for your papers. I have a question about Wittgenstein. You mentioned Catherine Pickstock's works on truth and so on. So in that connection, I was interested, what is the place of poetics in Wittgenstein's work, if there is any place of it, and in terms of language and language games also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Poetics or politics? Poetics. Okay, so then you're moving towards my field. You know, I'm working on poetry. So my title is of what I'm working on is cosmopoetics, cosmopoiesis. But it's been some time since I've read Catherine's work. So I think if I remember correctly, and I can paraphrase Wittgenstein saying that in principle it should be possible to write a philosophy that's one long poem or song or something like that. Maybe some people remember that quote better than I, but I think Wittgenstein is a friend when it comes to that level, because I think poetry and musical and aesthetic language requires engagement with our actual sensible, empirical ways of being in the world, even when we are moving on the level of the unconscious, of dreams. I think, and that will be my take from people like Henri Bergson as well, right? That also in the world of dreams, it's still images formed in that larger world, real world of real images and sensible qualities. And so if you just do the abstract level, you're not going to get a real philosophy either. In the end, it will become completely ghostly. So you need to go back sometimes and do kind of poetic ressourcement by returning to the practices and forms of life in the everyday. And so I think that's very much something we can learn from Wittgenstein. That in order to write and renew language, you absolutely, there is a connection between our practical way of life, our empirical way of being in the world, to use Heidegger's term, and creating something poetic. So that would be my answer, I think.